For as long as I can remember, I have been like viciously anxious about basically everything. I am the most tightly wound person you've ever encountered in your life, and basically anything on earth can make me jump if I didn't literally see it coming from a mile away. I remember in high school, I had a moment where my friend came into my dorm room to meet for a trip into town and grabbed me by the shoulder as well as at my desk, like reached over my chairs to kind of be like, hey, let's go. And then midway through whatever he was saying, he cut himself off and physically recoiled from how tense my shoulders were. Like he was asking me if I was okay because he thought that something must have happened. This has made me someone who is atrocious at handling horror. Like even just horror adjacent stuff can wreck me. I was paralyzed by fear for literal years as a child because of tremors, to the extent that I could not be on the ground floor of any building unless I was reassured that it was a thick enough floor that I would be safe from a graboid. I have not been able to go into the crypt in a Mortal Kombat game for years, ever since I got jump scared by that fucking crypt monster thing as a kid in MK9. When I had a bad reaction to the medication, I straight up saw that thing in my night terrors. When I saw Insidious, the moment where that fuck-ass demon suddenly shows up behind the guy's shoulder fucked with me for months. And there's proof of this on streams too. When I played Buried Star's bonus horror route, I had to take the better part of an hour for my heart rate to get back to normal after like an extremely minor jump scare where a hand reached down from the ceiling for just a second. And I couldn't continue until I shrunk the window down and covered literally everything but the text bar with a notebook that I draped over my monitor. When I played Your Turn to Die, I got through like, I think 2 streams before my friend Papa Losveld joined me to keep me company and help me avoid the jump scares. And even then, I have been afraid of Hallucination Joe getting me when I close my eyes in the shower ever since he first popped up. Even when I was making the thumbnail for this video, I had to keep that face invisible for as long as possible for the process and would look away from the screen when I had to try and save it. And like, I know that this is bitch-made behavior. Like, I don't need to be told that this is lame of me. I don't like being this way either. I know that these things are also just like baby's first jump scare. And it's not just embarrassing, it robs me of the ability to genuinely enjoy one of the foundational genres of modern fiction. I have avoided some amazing games and movies and TV shows because I know I won't be able to handle even the slightest whiff of horror. And it sucks. It makes me miserable to see my friends loving these horror-themed games and know that I just kinda can't. And I know I would enjoy it if I could get over myself because I really, really love media that's written in the style of horror without actually being horror. Buried Stars is written by horror writers and it really shows with how they build tension, but its main routes aren't really scary at all. They're just written with really amazing tension, and I love that feeling. Like that was so much fun for me. And so, on this, the spookiest day of the year, the one day a year when gays can dress like a total slut and no other gays can say anything about it unless they're faceless Twitter accounts, I want to explore what's wrong with me. I want to know why, in spite of my love for so many horror narratives in the abstract, and for so many spooky aesthetics, and for everything from the gore of Mortal Kombat to the campiness of artists like Elvira or early Kim Petras, I cannot seem to get over this hurdle. I apologize in advance for doing so many self-indulgent videos lately, but I promise this is the last one that'll be coming out, probably this year, but at least for a while. I can't enjoy horror, and that makes me miserable. But I want that to change. Part 1. Establishing boundaries. So, I should say up front, my relationship to scary shit is a little bit complicated to say the least. There are a lot of people who can't handle horror, but their reasoning tends to fall into a couple of major camps that I want to go over here. For example, you have the people who just aren't able to handle gore, and to me, that's an extremely valid or reasonable fear to have. Seeing a person get turned inside out or exploded or whatever else is entirely normal to be repulsed by, and while there are some people who relish in that repulsion, for other people it's just a deal breaker. For me, I really don't have too much of an issue with this sort of thing. Like maybe it's mental illness, but gore has never really bothered me too much. Like, I genuinely didn't understand as a kid why so many of my cousins were horrified by Mortal Kombat 9 when I was playing it at my grandma's house with them. And just in general, it never really was a problem for me. I mean, it's still gross, and visceral body horror is enough to make me squirm and feel uncomfortable, but I don't really mind it. It's not a deal breaker for me. Another group are the people who are afraid of a real-world thing that's reflected in horror. Stuff like serial killers or violent, dangerous real-life people. Their fear of being the victim of that sort of real-life violence tends to ruin things for them because it creates a lot of paranoia by giving them basically a blueprint of how that awful thing could happen to them that can run through their mind unchecked. Again, lots of people enjoy that stuff, but for me personally, this one's a bit of a coin toss. It very much so depends on the situation, because I'm usually fine with it right up until it starts involving getting stuck in the dark, especially in a basement or something. I have always been terrified of the dark, like far more than I should be, to the extent that I still have to look over my shoulder if I turn off the lights in a basement and then have to head up the stairs in the dark. As a kid, when my bedroom was in my family's basement, I would effectively become trapped in my room at night unless I was like deathly ill and really had to go do something, or something really, really bad had happened. Obviously, we're not getting exhaustive with all the types of horror here, but you get what I mean, right? And for me personally, the category I fit in most with are the people who can't handle the supernatural or psychological horror. The horror you can't escape because it doesn't play fair. If horror doesn't abide by the rules of physics in terms of how can I fight back, or what's its logic, how can I handle the situation, how do I save myself, then I don't like it and can't really handle it at all. But this isn't like a blanket statement. Like zombies, totally fine. I can handle that. They play by fair rules. A zombie can't just materialize out of nowhere. They're a workable opponent. I loved The Walking Dead as a kid. I loved Left 4 Dead. And I just, in general, have really never had a big problem with zombies. Stuff like aliens aren't really scary to me either for the most part. Like they can be a little bit scary, but not in like a horror way, just in like an intimidating way, you know? And even when I was a little kid, I don't really remember the flood from Halo being all that scary to me either. Like, definitely a little bit scary. It's the flood. If that's your first time encountering something like that, obviously it's a lot, but not enough for me to stop. However, ghosts, terrifying. If it can go through walls, if it can't be reasoned with, if it can materialize and dematerialize at will, if it can go invisible, that shit is what gets me, because those are the ones I can't handle. I will have nightmares about them forever, and they don't have to be literally supernatural to get me fucked up. Psychological stuff is scary to me too for the same reasons, because, again, you can't win that one. The monster is literally in your head. Also, something that overrides all other categories is jump scares. I cannot handle being jump scared because of the aforementioned so high-strung intense it makes people physically recoil when they touch me thing. And that's kind of just a hard one to get over. I'm not sure when jump scares became a thing for me, but I am almost certain it was from Halloween when I was like probably 7. We just gotten back from trick-or-treating and we were in the living room sorting candy while my dad was watching TV. And he would switch it to Tremors at basically all the exact wrong moments to catch the graboid just sucking someone underground. Then I would get sad, my mom would tell my dad to stop scaring me, he'd switch it over to football and make a joke about how the game was really scary, and rinse and repeat a few times until I was thoroughly traumatized. Also, I should say, I promise my dad is a good dad. If you are watching this, Dad, hi. For my audience, my dad has actually watched my content. Make of that what you will. He's very supportive, but I should say he wasn't trying to traumatize me or anything. I just don't think he realized how bad it would mess me up, which is fair because it wasn't really that big of a deal. Like same goes for Mustard. As a kid, I think his favorite prank was to go months making us just regular ham and cheese sandwiches. Then one day, he would just silently swap out the cheese for mustard and then make us eat it. And then when we took that first bite and realized it was mustard, he thought it was hilarious. Like I still can't bring myself to eat mustard to this day. I think this taste of betrayal is just too strong. Also, another thing I can't handle that I don't really know how to categorize is, weirdly enough, low resolution horror. Pixel games and tinny chiptune music will always fuck me up worse than elaborate graphics or orchestral soundtracks. Your Turn to Die and Process of Elimination have basically the exact same opening scene with the exact same theme of it. You know, you vote for someone, then they die. But Process of Elimination wasn't an issue for me at all. Whereas Your Turn to Die was actually a little bit stressful for me. It was a little bit scary. Absolutely no idea where that comes from. I didn't even really play that many games that would have fit that aesthetic when I was a kid, but my best guess is that I just kind of have a really active imagination, and whatever details aren't being filled in by the media itself will be automatically imagined to be the worst possible versions of themselves in my head. At this point, I think you probably get the broad strokes of where I'm coming from, or at least I hope you do, but I think it might be easier to show rather than tell what I'm talking about here if I'm going to get to the bottom of any of this. Part 2. Your Turn to Bury Dead Stars. The two games that I think illustrate all of this really well are Buried Stars and Your Turn to Die. Buried Stars is an excellent visual novel about a group of contestants on a survival competition singing show who get trapped after the stage collapses on them, and they have to find a way to survive in spite of someone impersonating their producer who's threatening to kill them. It is a very tense and atmospheric game, and you can really tell it's written by people who have a lot of experience in horror. I love it a ton, and I wish I could forget it so I could play it all over again and experience it for the first time. However, Buried Stars also has a third optional horror route that you can unlock after the other routes are beaten. And that was bad for me. I won't spoil the whole thing, but the horror takes the form of like ghostly hands just kinda reaching at you a lot of the time. They'll appear on the screen suddenly and then disappear. Think Insidious's stupid fucking demon thing. And eventually they start killing off the other contestants and sometimes taking on their forms, settling on the form of Gyehyuk for complicated reasons that basically boil down to Doyeon and Gyehyuk being gay for each other and the monster taking advantage of that, but we don't have time for that. Go watch the other videos that I've made about Buried Stars for that. This one fucked me up real bad, and I find that actually kind of interesting. After all, the tone of Buried Stars didn't really change all that much in the horror route in a lot of ways. The main routes are arguably horror routes in and of themselves, not in terms of narrative, but in terms of presentation. The slow, careful walks down hallways, eyes darting around, never knowing what's around the corner, always fearful that S. Seung-yeon is lying in wait just to start killing you. Doyeon has a fucking sanity meter, for Christ's sake, a staple of the horror genre. If his sanity drops to 0, which is a forced outcome in the game's first ending, no spoilers, you lose control of him and everything spirals out of control with bodies piling up and everything just going very bad for Doyeon. When characters die, they almost always die off screen, with much of the visceral brutality being kept ambiguous. A hand peeking out of rubble, a bloodied corpse dragged across the floor, feet dangling from a hanged body that you can't see, stuff like that. And stuff that normally I don't handle super well. Again, my imagination fills in the blanks, and usually I'd imagine the worst and that would make things hard for me. And yet, for this game, I really didn't. Like, I loved it. It was great. It was some of the best storytelling I've ever seen in a visual novel, and I cannot overstate how good of a job the writers and voice actors did in building up that anticipation for the brutality that would follow. I think that part of it is that there's never really any doubt that their deaths are natural, real-world causes. Kind of like in Danganronpa, where deaths are all solvable puzzles. Process of elimination has an element of that too, where whenever a character dies, even if it's horrifying and brutal, it's still fundamentally based in reality, either literal real-world reality or just something close enough that it passes the smell test. Nail polish laced with poison to kill an enemy by scratching them, a Rube Goldberg machine that drops a shot put ball on somebody, that sort of thing. Not necessarily purely realistic, but close enough to the real thing that it works. Buried Stars is a bit unique in this scenario because it's not really about solving the murders, like it kind of is, but there's more to it than that, and it's not like a detective game in that sort of way, but it does still function like a puzzle game in a lot of instances, and I think that actually helps me a lot. There's this feeling of control that comes with being able to solve whatever's happening to me. The knowledge that whatever I'm up against does have a solution, does have an answer, and can be beaten. This is probably where it's worth mentioning what got me over my two biggest fears as a child: the graboid and tornadoes. In both cases, I remember it so fucking vividly because it's frankly pretty stupid. My night would start out with a nightmare where I was at my elementary school and we would be attacked by one of the things I was terrified of. For tornadoes, they ripped through the school and I had to hide from them. And for graboids, they were eating kids up during recess in the winter when we went sledding on the hill. I would wake up from the nightmare, go to my parents' room crying, and need to be comforted. Again, I was like probably 8 or 9, younger than 10. They'd calm me down and send me back to bed, and eventually I'd fall back to sleep again. And then I'd have a sequel dream. For the tornadoes, I walked to school to find all my friends and family playing beach volleyball with like anthropomorphic tornadoes in the schoolyard. Like they were wearing Hawaiian shirts and just hanging out with them. And in that one, I was pissed because why are they acting like the tornadoes are friends? Like they just fucked everything up. And then everyone told me to just get over myself, and I was mad, so I went home and then woke up. And then I was mostly fine with tornadoes. With the graboids, the dream started back on the sledding hill, except the graboid and his sister came and talked to us, said they were sorry for the confusion, and offered to use their bodies as sledding ramps and loops and stuff for us, and then it all worked out. And then I wasn't really afraid of them anymore. In other words, I only really got over it once my fears became something more normal, humanized, and harmless, or at least capable of being harmless. It required them to become, in some capacity, tameable, controllable. Something that, even if you couldn't beat it, you could at least try to reason with it. I think that reflects the kinds of scary things that I can handle. Murder mysteries are inherently solvable, which makes them beatable. Whenever a game becomes a puzzle game, then everything else is just a glorified puzzle piece, and that makes it more manageable, I think. The Buried Stars horror route inverts all of that. You cannot beat the monster in that route, and it becomes clear early on that it's not a winnable fight. You will be taken over by the monster. You will not be saved. You are doomed to lose to an unstoppable force just like all your friends did. It will not fight fair, and you will not see it coming. I think that part is what really fucked me up. Your Turn to Die, by contrast, is the psychological horror problem. There is definitely some horrible gore and violence, but for me, I think that's actually pretty manageable. The parts that I struggled with were the parts where it wasn't clear what was real and what wasn't. There are monsters that begin appearing in certain minigames, and while they are real, soon Sarah Chitowin will begin hallucinating her own monsters to join them. And that was a really, Really bad point for me. Not to spoil the whole game or anything, but basically the entirety of part 2 of Your Turn to Die is Sarah going through a psychotic breakdown, and depending on the choices you make halfway through that section, part 3 is just a continuation of that breakdown. She is perpetually crashing out. Beyond that, while the monsters you face off against are usually real in these minigames, which should make them easier to deal with by my logic, we're running into the issue with low resolution shit again. Jump scares are always super effective against me, but they are even more effective in low resolution. I wish I knew why, I wish I could pinpoint it, but I do have some theories here. One is what I mentioned earlier. Low res just means a lot of room for your imagination to fill in the gaps, but the other that I think really gets me is the stillness. There's something infinitely more terrifying to me about something that just doesn't move. It's perfectly still. Your Turn to Die doesn't really do animation, at least not throughout most of the game. If it wants to communicate movement, it'll basically just show you a slideshow, which is what animation is, but we're talking 1 or 2 frames a second type of animation. A character entering a door as you enter the room will be shown as just a couple frames of a black silhouette peeking out of a door as you enter the room. A teddy bear crying blood will just have a sound effect accompany each time that the tears get lower on its face. Stuff like that. A character falling out of a locker will just suddenly fucking appear. There's no indication of movement, there's no build-up, they're just there. Character sprites in game also don't have faces, which I think really just adds the uncanny feeling of it all. Your Turn to Die also uses silence very effectively to ramp up the tension, and I am not someone capable of handling silence. At virtually all times in my day, I need to have noise playing. As soon as I get in the car from work, I hook up my phone to listen to something for the 5-minute drive home, then put in my headphones to listen to it while I walk into my house. And then I keep them in basically all day until it's time to either stream, record a video, or take a shower. When I go to bed, I sleep with one AirPod in, and as soon as I wake up, I put it back in its case and take out the other one to listen to something else while I get ready. Your Turn to Die has really, really fun music. It has a great soundtrack that I absolutely adore. I mean, you can hear it in the background of most of my videos at this point, but at a lot of points, it just completely shuts it off, and you are stuck in silence, alone, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. A big part of why I'm always listening to something is that it shuts down a lot of anxiety for me. I'm not really sure why, but if I can hear just something going on, it stops my imagination from running wild. I wish I'd actually explored it a bit more in the video I made about why sound is so important, but for me, I think that it's because sound communicates that I'm not alone. And more than anything, it helps me prepare for what's next, especially in media. I think back to Insidious, and part of why that jump scare hurts so bad was that there is no buildup. It's literally just a normal conversation, and suddenly it's just fucking there. I think back to Buried Star's horror route, and same deal. The monster hand jump scare happens genuinely out of nowhere in the middle of a completely normal conversation-ish, with normal-ish background music that then just cuts out. When the Crypt monster suddenly appears in Mortal Kombat 9, it's literally just a random out of nowhere thing with no buildup. When there's music that builds tension, then it doesn't usually affect me as badly because I'm prepared. And frankly, I'd argue that a jump scare with no warning is almost always just lazy. This is the one point I'll defend myself on where I don't think I'm just being a scaredy cat. This shit is Hitchcock's own philosophy about the bomb under the kitchen table. You don't build tension by just having people sit around a table and then suddenly a bomb goes off. That's exciting for half a second, but there's not tension. You build tension by cutting to the bomb, cutting back to the people, making their obliviousness clear, cutting back to the bomb, showing the timer running out, cutting back to the people, cutting back to the bomb, cutting back to the people, cutting back to the bomb, getting more and more frantic until suddenly it explodes. You have this feeling of wanting to scream at the TV, begging them to notice the danger, but it does nothing. That builds tension. That shit is what I loved about Buried Stars in its main routes. I love that feeling of tension. I love that release. And frankly, I kind of love the bait and switch. It's stressful in the moment, but I like it when they play with my emotions, making me feel fear about what could be around the corner, only to find nothing. Because even if it was nothing this time, I'm still not safe. It could be the next time when something bad's around that corner, you know? That's not to say Your Turn to Die does lazy jump scares. I think maybe a couple of them would qualify, but for the most part, it does the opposite. Instead of using musical cues or sound effects to communicate what's going to be coming right down the corner, it'll usually just drop all sound. When something really bad is about to happen, it frequently goes dead silent. The sounds of life that you've grown accustomed to are gone. When it does give you audio in those scenarios, it'll usually either be this dripping water noise or worse, this awful growling sound that just adds to the feeling that something is coming. It's this rumbling of something's stomach almost. The sounds that I use to feel comfortable are usually either music or YouTube videos, and both of those are kind of communicating an inherent structure. Language follows grammatical structure and communicates logic, and music follows musical structure and musical logic in a similar way. We go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all of that. And that still communicates that whatever's happening is under my control, or at least under the possible control of something. Like, that doesn't happen just randomly. You know what I mean? I think that's why I really love music that's meant to be about something spooky, actually. Like, Halloween by Aqua is literally just Friday the 13th meets Scream, sung by both Jason/Ghostface and a final girl. Like, actually, I'm going to pause for a second and let you hear how the opening of that song plays out, and you will see what I mean. Like, you see what I mean, right? And look, I think those movies would not go well for me if I watched them, but in song form, it works fine for me. And there is like a whole breakdown in that song too, where it is just the killer, whoever it is, legally distinct Jason/Ghostface, whatever, who's like monologuing about how he's creeping up on her in the night and sneaking up on her. You'll never guess his disguise, all this stuff. And I like it. It's fun. But for whatever reason, I don't think that would translate to the kinds of movies that this song is clearly pulling from. That's not to say that music is always comforting, obviously. Danganronpa V3's Fourth Floor is soundtracked by spirit, praise, and beauty, a dirge that, combined with the dark atmosphere, unnatural lighting, and all-around spooky vibes, really makes it a scary place to be, and I don't like it. Like, I will leave that area as soon as I possibly can. I also don't like the characters that are on it, but that's neither here nor there. Silence, or that sort of like growling sound Your Turn to Die does, or the dripping water or whatever, are the opposite. That is structureless. That's uncomfortable. Structure implies logic, implies intent, implies humanness, implies intellect, implies that whatever is there is real and understandable and beatable. When it's silent, you're flying blind. There is no communication about what will come next. There's no way to know what you're up against. There is no logic, intent, intellect, humanness, or anything else being communicated that could give you some comfort, to tell you that you're still dealing with something that you can handle. And to be clear, I think that's great for building tension. Hitchcock's analogy of the bomb under the table does make a lot of sense, but I think there's also a great deal of potential for building tension in suddenly depriving the audience of a sense that they were relying on so strongly, maybe without even realizing. To suddenly turn out the lights or deafen the audience, to suddenly make them acutely aware that they are being deliberately deprived of that sense. It communicates that it's something that would have given the game away, and that you were being deprived specifically to keep you on guard and off your footing. It's like in the example of the bomb under the table, if you had a picture-in-picture of the floor under the table for the entire movie, and then suddenly you saw like a bag get thrown under there and then it got cut and replaced with static while the conversation continued. All of a sudden, you've been made acutely aware of the knowledge that you don't have, that you don't know what's coming, but that something must be coming, or else they wouldn't have cut that sense off from you. I think this is also why games like Lethal Company and Repo aren't really all that scary for me, provided I'm with a friend in the moment. If I get left alone in those games for even a second, I almost immediately become a useless wreck, but if I have company with me, then I'm fine. They provide sound. They provide call and response. They provide a reassurance that what's happening is real, that it's meant to be dealt with by a person. And once I've seen the monsters, they're often not all that scary to me. I mean, once I know what a jump scare looks like, then I'm usually mostly okay with it if I know it's guaranteed to come. And once I've played a game before, I can usually make it work. Especially if it's a game where, you're supposed to be able to kill the thing. Once I know what beats it, then I can control the situation. I can handle it. But like, what does this actually say about what I'm scared of? Part 3. What really scares me? There's one other flavor of horror, I guess you could say, that scares me arguably more than anything else. Something that immediately gets me to go from 0 to 100. Something that's unavoidably terrifying for me. And also probably the most embarrassing thing for me to admit of being genuinely afraid of. Glitches. I am genuinely, truly more terrified by shit glitching out randomly than I am of almost literally anything else. I was less scared when a guy I was hanging out with randomly pulled out a fucking meth pipe than I was when Danganronpa 2 started getting all glitchy. Games where shit all of a sudden starts getting staticky, where shit starts jumping around, where the screen starts bugging out, where the text starts warping, where the sound is cutting in and out and fluctuating randomly. That shit fucks me up. That's horrifying. That's terrifying. I cannot handle it. More than literally anything else, that shit is guaranteed to fuck me up tremendously. Like 100% success rate there. it doesn't even have to be fiction. If my computer randomly blue screens on me when I'm working on something, especially if it's late at night or something, I have to leave and go do something else immediately so I can calm down. Like, it's a lot for me. If my phone bugs out and randomly resets on me, that's scary. I get scared. When electronics just in general start acting up, I get more scared than anything else, and I've never really understood why. Or at least, I didn't before making this video. See, I've said it before, but part of why I make these videos is that I like to use them to just purge my thoughts, to get them out into the world and off my shoulders, make it your problem instead of just mine. However, the other thing is that they help me sometimes find an answer that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to come to a conclusion that I couldn't have reached myself by just spiraling on the subject, but that I can find when I'm forced to put it all down in a script and try and find some sort of a conclusion for it so that you guys actually want to watch it. And for me, part of why I wanted to make this video is because it not only allows me to vent about this frustration I have about not being able to enjoy horror, but also because I was hoping it would lead me to an answer about all this, about why I can't enjoy horror. I thought maybe it would help me figure out how to start enjoying it. But when I put it all together, I think that I've come to realize that what I don't like about horror is that I struggle with unpredictability, with not being able to see my opponent coming, with feeling like I'll be caught off guard, with feeling like I need to be alert at all times so I don't lose. All the things that were the scariest for me were things that I felt like I couldn't predict. Tornadoes were confusing and dangerous. Graboids seemingly attacked at random with no warning. The crypt monster appeared out of nowhere. The Joe hallucination sometimes appeared at random. All that stuff. But the thing is, sure, they are unsettling images. And I think what's always tripped me up is the feeling that it must be something about the images themselves that's harder for me to handle. That the problem is something visual. As I worked through this video, though, I realized that that's not the issue, I don't think. None of what I found unmanageable about any of this was the images themselves. I don't have an issue with the image of Hallucination Joe in isolation. It's obviously unpleasant, it's meant to be, for sure, but what scares me about it is that it reminds me of when he first showed up, and what he represents in-game. The hallucinations, the lack of control. The jump scare of him appearing on screen was the unpleasant part, and what I don't like about the image is just that it draws me back to that it feels like that again. There's gore and violence and death and awfulness in a lot of these games I play, but that part was never unmanageable. In Your Turn to Die, the brutal, cruel deaths of the characters were never what made the game hard to play, and same goes for Buried Stars. It's something else. But I think once I made the connection to glitches, I have realized what it is. It's a lack of control. I have a lot of issues with feeling like I'm not in control of a situation. I don't know where it really stems from, and I don't know why I'm like this, but when I put all the pieces together, I'm realizing that that is the common thread here, and with the other stuff I haven't even had time to talk about in this one. Part of why horror movies in general are almost always a universal note for me is I think that I'm never in control there. But I can handle a book or a written summary perfectly fine because then I'm in control of each word I read. I can put it down, I can distract myself if I need to. I've only ever sat through a few full horror movies before, and the only one that didn't ruin me for a while afterwards was It Follows. And partially that's because it's fucking awful, but also partially because I think it's the only horror movie I've ever watched where you could be in control of the situation. Killing game media has never bothered me the way it's bothered some other people I know, and I think in part that's because the horror of the scenario is undermined by being in control of the outcomes, of being able to solve things. Even in Psycho Sleuth, which is defined by the lack of control you have over your own cognition, the psychological horror of it all, I still feel like I'm in control of the situation enough to make it work because that's how this scenario is built. Doesn't mean it's always pleasant. I did not like it when all the limbs started turning into weird meat appendages, but hey, we'll talk about this some other time, I guess. I don't know. But glitches have always fucked me up. I don't understand computers very well, and as a kid, I would get very scared by them acting in ways I didn't anticipate or expect. And that kind of just applied to technology in general, to be honest. The most vivid example I can remember is when I was playing Clue on the SNES with my cousin as a kid in his basement. And we didn't really get how the game worked. Like, we must have been pretty young, like maybe 5 or 6, and hadn't really had the rules explained to us. And I think we accidentally accused someone and got it wrong, which ends the game. Fine. But the game played some really ominous music, and the screen got weird, and we panicked and got scared and shut it off. Like, I was terrified of being in his basement forever after that, like until they moved. But there was other stuff too. Like the time we were listening to music at my Nana's house when suddenly the volume just maxed out for literally no reason. Like, I still don't really know why it did that. And it was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. I don't think my heart rate went back to normal for like a couple hours. I was scared of Oblivion for a long time because I fell for that stupid jump scare thing that people used to do on YouTube where they'd be like, look really close at the screen for this small little detail, and then a screamer would pop up. Someone did that to me with an Oblivion guide, and I couldn't handle being in the ruins dungeon things for a long time after that. And even though it obviously wasn't part of the game, but it still made me scared. It stuck with me. When I played Danganronpa 2, as an adult, mind you, like I think I was, 24 or something? The latter parts of the game where shit starts glitching out while you're exploring the school really were not fun or easy for me. Like that was, 0 out of 10, hate that shit. Any game I've ever played where glitching cameras or staticky noises or glitching characters or whatever else are happening is a fucking no for me. I think this is also kind of where the issue with low-res stuff comes from too, particularly in the style of something like Your Turn to Die. The movement of characters and objects is unnatural. The slideshow-like movement makes it feel like you can't really rely on your senses or your ability to anticipate what's happening, your past experiences with how things move, to give you an accurate idea of what's coming next. And the soundtrack, sound effects, and silence all combine with that to make it feel disjointed. And to be clear, that's not a bad thing. That adds to the feeling that the game is going for, and I'm not complaining about that. But it does make it a lot harder to feel like I'm in control when I can't follow a character's motions as easily as I would like to be able to. Where instead of watching their arm rise up in the air, it's just suddenly there. Or where I can't see how someone moves, I just see them disappear into a doorway. And there is just something scary about something being deadly still. If someone was walking down the hallway of my building towards me, like that wouldn't be scary. That's just a person walking. But if they were just standing completely still, staring straight ahead in the middle of the hallway, that's terrifying. And if they were just like staring straight into a corner or something, or if you could see their eyes and they're not blinking, their shoulders aren't rising and falling with each breath, I would genuinely rather just kill myself than try and walk past them or turn my back on them. No, not doing that. Something bad's gonna happen to me. You could trap me in my apartment for years by doing that, I think. Low resolution horror, to me, kind of feels like that. The stillness is unnatural, and if it's combined with other inexplicable or unpredictable behavior, it becomes even scarier because it becomes clear that you're not the one in charge of the situation. You don't have control, and you can't wrestle control back. The glitchy stuff is like that too, because now movement is inconsistent within itself, if that makes sense. You can't rely on something being in the position where it should be, and stillness no longer means not moving because they might still be getting warped around and you might not be able to rely on other senses to tell you where they are or what's happening. The other major side of this for me is imperceptibility. I need to at least have a fair shot of being able to perceive whatever is going to fuck me up. Invisibility fucks with me badly. Walking through walls fucks with me even worse, and being completely silent until you're right up next to me might actually kill me outright. And again, I think that comes down to a lack of control. I don't want to feel like I'm not able to be in control of the outcome. Even if I fail to control it in the end, at least I had a fair shot, like it was a winnable scenario. The inevitability of failure is very scary to me, I guess. With zombies, I can perceive them. They follow certain rules. They are within their own logic consistent, and it's possible to fight back and beat them. The Flood? Scary, for sure. They're meant to be, but still pretty manageable because they're not exactly hard to keep track of. They follow a logic. They function in a way that's pretty easy to figure out. But ghosts? That's bad. Psychological stuff like hallucinations? That's even worse, because then I'm the only one who can perceive them, and they're not bound by any rules whatsoever. They will follow me until I'm done. They can just show up wherever and whenever they want. That's the shit that fucks me up when I'm in the shower and have to close my eyes, because the only sense that can catch those fuckers is sight. The Joe hallucinations, the Buried Stars monster, all that shit is exclusively seen, not heard. If I'm sitting in the dark in silence, I feel so vulnerable and scared. I mean, I feel like I'm safe from a perceivable threat, like a person breaking into my apartment, because they're handicapped by having to rely on the same senses as me. What about the imperceivable ones? Ghosts can operate in the dark better than I can, and a hallucination works best in the dark because you can't ground yourself with anything that you can see or hear that you know is real in contrast with the hallucination. And so if I sleep with an AirPod in, at least I can kind of ground myself in that. But what I think makes all of this really interesting to me in particular is that I love being on the other side of this shit. As a kid, I loved jumping out from behind corners to scare my siblings. All my life, to this day, I am the quietest walker you'll never hear coming. I could wander around my house at night as a kid deadly silently, and not a soul would know I was there. Not until at least I was right up behind them and started talking. One time, I scared the shit out of my mom at night by walking up behind her completely silently to tell her that my sister was feeling sick. To her, it probably felt like I just materialized out of thin air. Even in video games, my favorite characters are stealth characters where you can't fight back until I decide to start the fight, with the most obvious example being Sombra. I mean, she's basically all of the things that make me anxious to deal with. Computer glitches, invisibility, disabling senses and abilities, all that shit. And yet, I love her. I don't want to play fair. I want to win, and I want to be in control of the fight the whole time. And I do really like scaring people. I like being able to sneak around and be imperceptible. I like being able to fuck with people and keep them off guard. Even when I'm playing social deduction games with my friends, I'm pretty well known among them at this point for being really, really good at just outright gaslighting people into believing me in spite of all the evidence. I love getting the opportunity to trick people. Like, just look at the studies I've done in the past where I lied to my respondents about what was actually happening, and you can practically hear the glee in my voice when I reveal what's actually going on. And this extends to anxiety related to non-horror stuff as well. Back when I was in politics, the scariest part was always waiting for the votes. I would become paralyzed with fear, unable to do anything. I love the rest of the process. Like, I love the debates, I love meeting the public, I love getting to argue my ideas even with hostile audiences. All that stuff is kind of right up my alley. It's really fun for me. But I can control all of those. I'm a good public speaker. I can handle the public and I can win an argument. But I can't control the votes, especially once they've all been cast and now it's just time to count. I get terrified of my friends talking behind my back and will become a nervous wreck if a friend ghosts me or blocks me or something because I'm worried that something's happened that's outside of my control. That a rumor is spreading that I can't do anything about, or that there's been a miscommunication that I can't fix if I don't know about it. I get terrified that I'm going to be gaslit or tricked, especially when it's a relationship or something, because then I'm not the one in control. Someone else is controlling me. And in a relationship, I wouldn't do that to someone else, obviously. Like, there are limits to what I want to control. But even if I don't want to take control of a scenario, there's still the fear that any potential to control my own fate in it will be taken from me. At work, I become a ball of anxiety if it feels like something's gone wrong and I can't fix it, or if there was an opportunity for a promotion and I haven't heard back yet or something like that, or whatever else. And this isn't the first time I've tried to get to the bottom of why I don't like horror, or why I can't handle it, I should say. I've always wished I could handle it. Not being able to deal with horror has meant having to skip movie nights with friends, avoid games that people insist I'd love and they're probably right, and avoid my friends' streams when I know they're playing a scary game. But each time I tried to figure out an answer, I'd come up empty-handed. I couldn't figure out what to do about it. This is the first time I think I've come up with a real answer. It's about a lack of control. The question is, what can I do about it? And the answer to that is, I don't know. Psychological baggage is hard to actually do anything about solo, especially because the more I think about it, the more deeply rooted it is. But I don't know, maybe now that I've put a name to what this obstacle is, I can get over it a bit more. Maybe now that I know it's this desire to control everything, I can actively work on releasing that desire a bit more. Or at least maybe when things start to get scary, I can slow down and try and ground myself a bit more. Because at the end of the day, that's what I actually want to be able to do. It's not fun being so high-strung and anxious, constantly on edge to make sure I don't get caught off guard. It is almost certainly bad for my heart and my health, and it's definitely bad for my mental health, and it actively undermines my ability to not only enjoy so much scary media, but so much of life in general. But now that I've defined what my issue is, I can also begin to explore more horror media in general, because I have a more coherent understanding of what my actual problem is with it. Previously, I've basically just written off all scary stuff across the board because even though I knew I could handle some of it, I didn't know what conditions needed to be met for that. I knew I could play through Resident Evil 4 for some reason, like all in one night, and wasn't really bothered, but was still fucked up by graboids for years. Maybe now I can try and find games where this sort of thing will be okay for me, to dip my toes in more and more to learn what I actually can or can't handle and work my way through it. And maybe if I'm really lucky, knowing that this is the cause might just be enough to let me finally enjoy horror. To stop feeling miserable, not only because I can't experience this media, and not only because of the effects it's had on me when I am exposed to it, but also because I felt left out by not being able to join in on the stuff that so many people love, and that I think I will love too. To stop feeling like a coward, to stop feeling scared, to stop feeling embarrassed of myself when I have to say no because I know it'll mess with me too much. To get to finally enjoy the feeling of tension, of anticipation, of fear that builds to a crescendo. Or maybe I'll say scared. Who's to say? Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on the night it came out, happy Halloween, and I hope you get lots of discounted chocolate tomorrow. Regardless of when you watch this, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. If you really liked it though, you should consider becoming a channel member. Members give $5 or more a month to support this channel, and in return get to vote for one video topic per month. On top of that, today's the final day for contributing to the 2.0 debut donathon. And if you want any of these lovely rewards, memberships and donations through the link in the description all count towards both community and individual rewards. Speaking of, the next Members' Choice poll starts tomorrow, November 1st at midnight. And these are the topics they'll be deciding between: Oblivion, Skyrim, and how limitations can make games better. This video would argue that Oblivion's relatively more restrictive gameplay and mechanics actually allow the player to make more choices and explore more freedom than Skyrim's open-ended approach to skills, combat, and progression. What does it mean to perform poorly? This video would be about how we evaluate performance and how our understanding of performance metrics is counterintuitive, both in gaming spaces and beyond. The content creator crisis of the commons. This video would explore how online content is a uniquely modern crisis of the commons and how that impacts the relationships between viewers, creators, and content. Psycho Sleuth and mental illness in killing games. This video would be about Psycho Sleuth, a killing game story revolving around the gimmick of transferable cognitive impairments, and would explore how both Psycho Sleuth and other killing game stories have handled mental illness in general. Like I said, if you're interested in voting for one of these topics, voting opens tomorrow for channel members. And if you want to vote for one of them, the links to join the membership are in the description. Lastly, thank you very much to all my channel members. At the $25 Elite membership tier, thank you to Adele, Robot Juice, and Bingo Banga. At the $10 Premium membership tier, thank you to Tortoise, Andrew Tenar, Bailey Nichols, Gavi Corbin, Corey Anders, and NJD. At the $5 channel membership tier, thank you to Cage the Orc, Fish Toast, Alex Stone, Destiny, Cadence, Gavost, Marsh Alice, Crimson Cyclo, Catlover192, Corey, Amon Dadley, MV, The Only Enigma, Mariah, Meep Cube, Noisy Pitta, Harv, Marcy Gaskill, Deku _ Safon, Lala the Bambi, JMD Toaster, Teo Tamara, Pudincess, Alinea, Caffeine Jelly, Ismi, and Aiden Ness. Whether you're a channel member, a subscriber, or just clicked on this video out of curiosity, thank you very much for watching, and I hope we'll see you around again soon.